Happy fall, everyone. I'm really glad that you decided to join me today for another episode. I'm also really glad that I finally have the time to record this because it's been a busy week. And if you're new here, welcome. I really hope that you will like it here. And if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. Grab a drink, grab your knitting or any other project you're working on, and let's spend some time chatting about knitting. I think we'll start with my finished Peacock Cardigan. I already talked about it twice, so I don't want to spend too much time dwelling on it, but I really like the finished object and it's quite a useful seasonal knit to have. But finishing this project really confirmed this weird phenomenon that keeps happening. Every time I finish a project that takes me a long time to knit, I end up hating it the first time I put it on. I get this wave of intense negative critical thoughts about the project, like the fit is wrong, the button band is wonky, the sleeves are too long, the yarn is not correct, whatever. It's not even true usually. I'm not sure why it happens. Maybe it's because when I work on a project for a long time, my judgment kind of gets obstructed. The only way I found to deal with this is to start using the project or wearing it as soon as possible. Usually it helps this feeling pass really quickly, but it's still really strange that my first reaction to like half the projects I finish is I hate it. I don't hate it. I really like it. And I'm actually quite proud of myself with this one because I wasn't lazy as usual, and I did the setup row to do the Italian cast off for my 2x2 rib. This pattern originally has 1x1 rib on the cuffs and on the hem. As I said, I think in the other episode, I like 2x2 rib a lot more. So I usually just switch to 2x2 rib, but I'm too lazy to do the setup round and I end up just casting it off in long tail cast off. But on this project, I took my time. I did the setup row and it's actually really easy. You just need to turn your knit 2 purl 2 stitches into knit 1 purl 1 knit 1 purl 1 stitches, and make sure that you don't turn your knit stitches into purl stitches because it makes it look kind of not polished enough. So what I do is I knit 1, make 1 purl, then knit 2 together and then purl 1, and do this for 1 round or row, and then just do the regular Italian cast off. Some people call it tubular cast off. I also know that some people do this like slip stitch row before they do the cast off. I tried it a couple of times, but for me I don't think it makes that much difference in terms of like stretchiness or the stitches looking even, so I just skip it most of the time. The only thing that sort of disappointed me about this project is the yarn, surprisingly. I'm not sure why, but the sleeves are already billing and it's not looking good. The yarn I used is Gepard Garn Pure Lana, and I really liked working with this yarn. It's really soft, and even though it's like 50% alpaca and 50% wool, it's not scratchy or itchy. It's really soft and like buttery to work with. I just didn't expect it to start billing so quickly, so it is a bit of a disappointment, but maybe you have a different experience working with this yarn, so let me know. I apologize if I sort of jumped between frames just now. I just had to get up and wake up my cat because she was snoring again. My next project is something I started on a complete whim, basically. I originally bought this kit of hand-dyed sock yarn with like a matching mini skein of a solid color, and the dyer gifted me another one, so another set of the same colorway, which was really nice of her and really unexpected. I feel like I should mention that this is a gift, but it's not a promo or anything. I just sort of know her personally. We chat about yarn knitting and like yarn dyeing sometimes. She's a really talented Ukrainian yarn dyer, and usually when I get hand-dyed sock yarn, a really interesting thing happens. I look at it once and I declare that it's too nice to use for socks, and then I have to really wrap my head around how to incorporate this yarn into a bigger project, and I end up playing some intense games of yarn chicken with it. But since I had about 250 grams of this yarn in total, I decided that it would be more than enough for like a simple stockinette sweater. So I chose a pattern I already knit, and it's the Other Loops light loop sweater. I chose it because it has a really sort of open gauge. It's intended for just 1 strand of silk mohair. I paired my sock yarn with a thicker mohair. It's not a silk mohair, it's just 50% acrylic, 50% mohair. It's pretty scratchy actually, but I just had it in stash, so I paired it with the hand-dyed yarn, and It came out so beautiful. I don't have a lot of simple stockinette sweaters in my wardrobe, so this was a nice addition. And I thought that since I made this pattern before, it should be a piece of cake. It just will take me a couple of days, especially on 7mm needles, but no. I spent 3 days doing and redoing and trying again and unraveling, crying. Basically, I was really struggling with the German short rows on the neck, raised neck portion. I even sent a screenshot of this like German short row instruction and sent it to a friend to see if maybe she can tell me what I was doing wrong. And in the end, we declared that there was a mistake in the pattern, definitely. In the next like couple of hours, when I was still trying to redo it, I realized that all this time I thought that, let me show you, this stitch here that creates this like shaping under the ribbing is a make one stitch, but this is actually a turn stitch. So this is like the end of my German short row, and I was trying to wrap my head around how to do this increase and then turn after the decrease. I basically imagined a stitch that wasn't even there and tried to make it work for 3 days, and this is really embarrassing. And also I kind of shaded the designer unnecessarily to my friend, so yeah, it was quite an embarrassment. But the good news is that the rest of the sweater took me exactly 3 days to finish, and the only modification I made is to add the ribbing at the cuffs and at the hem, because the original pattern doesn't have any, because it's made in this like light silk mohair. But this fabric will definitely roll without any ribbing, so I added some twisted rib to the hem. This sweater turned out to be so versatile, I'm so surprised. I wore it with a silk maxi bias skirt and some heels, and it created a really nice evening look. But I also wore it with old sweatpants, sneakers, and no makeup, and it also created a really nice casual outfit, so I'm really happy to have it. The only thing I don't like about it is the fact that the mohair is scratchy, but I can live with it. And let me show you, just to compare, my first light loop sweater, which was made with one strand of silk mohair. It's just so interesting to see how the same pattern can look so different just because of the different yarn weight. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to hold them up nicely to show, but it's just really interesting to see. The mohair is everywhere now, but let's move on. I also had a stash busting phase in October. I decided to use up some of the small leftover quantities of yarn I had, and I found these two yarns just laying next to each other and thought they looked cute, so I decided to self-draft a pair of socks. I'm using the term self-draft super generously here. I just, as I said, happened to see these yarns next to each other and decided they're sort of a similar weight to make them work for color work. I drew a really simple Nordic star motif in stitch fiddle and just started knitting. I understand now, after finishing these socks, why most of the colorwork designs for smaller circumferences have like a line or a border at the end of the repeats or around, because this jog right here, I think you can see it quite clearly, it looks super messy. I think having a horizontal line of stitches in a contrasting color would have fixed it, but next time I'll know better. These socks are just perfect for what they are, regardless. They're just a really nice and warm pair of house socks to wear to bed mostly, which I was doing already, so excuse any pet hair that you can see on them. They also came out looking sort of Eastery, which is not what I intended, but we're just gonna roll with it. The yellow yarn I used is the yarn I used for my smock pillow right there. It's vintage Kambgarn yarn, and this white tweedy yarn is, honestly, I don't know where it came from. I don't remember buying it, but I think I'll remember eventually. In any case, as I said, they're perfect for what they are. I really like them, and I was able to use up these two small, lonely balls of yarn, so really happy with them. And this kind of motivated me to continue going and using these small quantities. So I finally decided to use my two really miserably small quantities of leftover drops yarn. I made 2 December bows, which is a petite knit pattern. I'm sure you can find a similar design or pattern for free online, but I couldn't be bothered. She explained it really well in her instructions, so I was more than happy to pay for the pattern. And I think each of the bows used about 20 grams of yarn, including the I-cord loop here, and this green one is Drops Sky, which is a yarn that I used for my grandmother's shawl that I made last year, and I forgot how delightful this yarn is to work with. It's really soft and like airy, and it creates a really nice texture because it's a chain knit yarn. So I remembered that I declared that I want to make more things from it. The second yarn, Drops Boucle, is not welcome in this household. I'm super disappointed with this yarn. I don't recommend it. Maybe, again, if you have a different experience working with this yarn, let me know. But for me, it's the most disappointing and bad quality, dare I say, yarn. It pills really quickly after you start wearing it or using it. It's a bummer because it looks amazing after blocking and it's super soft. And for a boucle yarn, it's not that hard to work with, actually. Yes, you cannot see the stitches most of the time, but I think it's true for any boucle yarn. It doesn't get tangled or anything, so I was really excited about it. I think I made a pillow and also a pair of slippers from it, but both of those are unfortunately donated now because after you use this yarn for just a little tiny bit of time, it starts looking like something you picked up at a fast fashion store like 5 years ago and used it to mop the floors or something, because it looks ragged. It looks super pilly. It starts to lose its shape, lose its color. The pills it creates are these like really long, weird bits of hair sticking out, and I just really don't like it. I'm sorry. So I'm kind of happy that I was able to use up this yarn in a way that I don't need to touch the finished object. It's probably gonna be like a Christmas decoration or a stocking stuffer. And these are so convenient to knit on the go because the project can actually fit inside your pockets. I keep another one I'm working on in my purse, and I was at the dentist last week and I was sitting in line and finished like half of it just by sitting in line. So really recommend this pattern. Maybe some lonely balls of yarn would like to become December bows, especially with the holidays coming up. So really recommend it. I then found 2 more leftover sock yarns that I thought looked nice together and decided to make these colorwork socks. I think the pattern is called Eina or Eina. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but it's a great free pattern for this colorwork leg sock design. And the only reason, or like not the only reason, but the main reason I decided to make these is because usually when I make socks, I go for the German short row heel just because it's the easiest for me. I know how to do it almost like with my eyes closed. I don't have to think about it. The other ones I know how to do in theory, and I did them a couple of times, but I just get too lazy to look up some of the details on how to do it correctly. And I, as I said, go straight for the German short row heel. So I decided to not force myself, but get myself the opportunity to make my gray cells working again. And I think I managed to do it neatly enough, I hope. It's like a slip stitch heel here. And I posted a picture of these socks on Instagram while I was still working on them, and my friend apparently fell in love with them, with the color combination and with the colorwork design. And I was like, you can have them. I'm not that excited about them. I'm mostly doing it to practice the heel and to use up the yarn. So if you like them so much, you seem more excited about them than me, so they're yours. And let me tell you, as soon as I promised that I will send her the socks, I found out that my gray cells really worked hard on this project. They did their best, because after I blocked them, I noticed that one sock is noticeably longer than the other, and I couldn't figure out why. And then after I stared at it for like a long time, longer than needed, I realized that I did some unnecessary lines of color work that were not in the pattern on one sock and not on the other. I don't know how it happened. Maybe I was too smug and thought I kind of remember the colorwork motif and can do it without looking, but clearly I can't. And my boyfriend, when he saw the socks, he was like, oh yeah, I can see it, it's really bad, can you just unravel and redo it again? And I had to explain to him that I will have to unravel the whole sock to about here and just re-knit it again. And he immediately was like, oh no, it's not that noticeable, it looks great, it looks fine, nobody will notice, just stretch the other sock a little bit longer and it'll be fine. I have a feeling he was not truthful with me, but anyway, is it noticeable? Do you think it's noticeable? I think it is, but not my socks anymore, so it's her problem. The last finished object I wanted to show you is something that kind of wrapped up my stash busting adventures for now, and this is my Sophie shawl or scarf. It's something in between because I didn't really follow the stitch count in the pattern. I had to use up this yarn, which if you maybe recognize it, it's my leftover tweed mohair, vintage tweed mohair that I used for the weekend slipover a couple of months ago, and I was able to use up all of it. I have a similar shawl called the Autumn Tail shawl, and I wear it quite a lot, but I remember when I made it, it was such a stressful game of yarn chicken because I had like 60 grams of Lopi Lettlopi. I had to divide it in half and make 2 identical panels with just increases and then sew them together with a Kitchener in the middle, which was not fun because Lopi Lettlopi, it breaks really easily, so I had to splice the yarn like 20 times while I was doing the Kitchener stitch. But regardless, I used a similar approach for this shawl. It was not as intense, thankfully. I just divided my yarn in half and used the first half, or like about 80% of the first half, to do the increases. Then I knit straight until I was out of yarn, joined the second half, knit for about 20% straight, and then started doing the decreases, and it worked beautifully. I used up all of it, which is amazing. It's a nice accessory to have, nice kind of palette cleanser project. I think I already made a Sophie shawl before, but I made it as a gift for somebody, so it's the first one I have, and it's, again, surprisingly similar to my Autumn Tail shawl, but this one is much smaller, so they kind of serve different purposes in my wardrobe, which I still appreciate. And that's all for the finished objects. I have only 2 works in progress because I got a commission, which was my first commission. I never had any like orders or never got any like payment for knitting, so it was a really nice surprise. I might as well show you the cardigan I've been working on. A friend approached me with a commission order to make this really simple Baba style cardigan, and I was happy to oblige because it didn't sound too hard to draft something like this. It's technically still a work in progress because I still need to attach the buttons and also add some patch pockets here and here. I want to add them after blocking so I can sort of knit them in the right proportion and know exactly where to attach them. And also it's a good opportunity to show you how I block my cardigans because I always baste the button band here before I block it, because once it's wet, it's really easy to get it all like skewed and uneven. Especially these corners right here, they can get really stretched out. So I just remove the basting once it's dry and attach the buttons. Let me get back to my regular setup so you can see my face again. One sec. Even though I've never done a commission before, I did get approached about doing one a couple of times, and usually the person sends me either a crochet pattern or something that was clearly machine knitted for like inspiration or to show what kind of style they have in mind, so I say no. But as I said here, I was pretty sure that I would be able to sort of deliver what she wants because it's not a really complicated project to draft, and she likes it so far. The only problem with this commission is the fact that I panicked and named too low of a price. It's not her fault. She's not responsible in any way. She didn't like force me to make it for this little, but I still feel like it's not enough to sort of cover the work I would need to do or like needed to do because it's almost finished. I spent maybe like 2 weeks working on it and didn't do anything else. I wasn't really knitting anything else besides the bows, I guess, because I don't like to have knitting deadlines. The only reason I can think of why I priced it so low is because she obviously paid for the yarn, and once I told her how much her yarn quantity is going to cost, I felt bad for also like naming a high price for the work. So I rounded it up completely not in my favor, and well, next time I will know better. I will think really long and hard before naming my price, thinking about how much time, how much designing, how much maybe unraveling or any kind of planning and actual knitting work will go into the project, because there's nothing to confront her about. As I said, it's not her problem. I named a price and she agreed to it, but it kind of taught me some things to keep in mind in the future. She also asked me to knit her a pair of socks. And this time I was able to kind of hold my own a little bit more, and I named a reasonable, I think, price for a pair of socks, which she immediately agreed to. which is crazy because it only confirmed my sort of theory that I need to be more bold when naming a price, because who knows, the person might actually agree to it and find it reasonable. So I'm making her a pair of socks. This is also the yarn from this Ukrainian dyer I mentioned before, the one who gifted me the yarn for the Other Loops sweater. And it's this really nice tonal, I guess, blue color, light sky blue. It really looks like clouds and sky when you knit it up. It's beautiful. But to be honest, I'm not really a fan of this color specifically. She thinks it's one of the most beautiful colorways she's ever seen. But for me, these kinds of pale or like pastel blues and greens, one of my least favorite colors, to be honest. They just remind me of depressing school or hospital hallways. And if you live in Eastern Europe, if you're from here, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So this color is not for me, but I obliged to what she requested. And also, again, a good opportunity to show you my process. I knit socks 2 at a time, but not really. I don't do the 2 at a time technique. I just start them at around the same time. And I do the first cuff, then the second cuff, a little bit of the leg, a little bit of the leg on the other side, and just keep it back and forth. My goal is to keep them not so far apart from each other in terms of being done, because otherwise I will just finish one sock, get terrible, intense second sock syndrome, and never even start the other one. So this sort of prevents it, because both socks are always in progress. Since I started doing that, I never had second sock syndrome happen to me again, which was great. I also use this approach for anything that you need 2 separate pieces of, so like mittens, slippers. Not for sleeves though, because usually when I knit sweaters top down, the sleeves are already attached. Even if you finish one sleeve, it's not like it's completely finished. So I really recommend it. Maybe you're doing something similar, let me know. I only finish one sock when I'm really close to the decreases at the toe on the other one. She also requested some texture, so I'm making this sort of mock rib textured stitch here. It's actually super simple. You just, on the first round or row, knit 1, purl 1, and then on the second round or row, you knit all stitches, and you just break the rib every second round. I'm really good at explaining things, I know. I only have these 2 works in progress, and I didn't cast anything new and not planning to until maybe this weekend, just because I don't want to distract myself from the commission, so I don't have to then rush it through the deadline. I want it to be done as soon as possible so I can block it and send it to her. But once I'm done with the commission, I have a plan to redo my weekend slipover. Not the one from the Tweety vintage yarn, but the black one. Even though I wore it quite a lot after I made it last year, since I made 2 other slipovers for myself, I find that I don't reach for it anymore. A few weeks ago, I was thinking about my kind of, not fall knitting plans, because it's sort of too late for that, I think, but just my knitting plans in general. I decided that I want to make myself a plain, dark stockinette sweater. And then I was like, wait a minute. I have this black slipover, which I don't really wear anymore, so maybe I can just buy some yarn and just make some sleeves and have a new finished object from an old finished object. But I wasn't able to find the same yarn. This is Lettlopi Black Heather. And unfortunately, the store I bought it at, which is the only store that sells Lettlopi here, they only had 1 ball of this Black Heather colorway left. So I had to buy a similar colorway, and I'll have to kind of marl it. Let me show you the difference. This is the original heathered black, and this is the Black Sheep colorway. It's pretty similar in terms of having these like white or gray heathered bits, but this is more kind of chocolatey and this is more black. I was really pleasantly surprised that the difference is this subtle, because I thought there would be a lot more of a contrast between them. Judging by how they look, I think with some alternating and maybe strategic splicing, marling, whatever, I will be able to make it work. And I still have the black for the ribbing left over, so I'm good to go just as soon as I finish the commissions. And I have some acquisitions, so let's go. I gotta admit that I think I thrifted yarn a little bit too close to the sun, because this yarn really scared me when I received it. This is, I think, from Sirdar. I believe it's just this Lopi style rowing yarn with some tweedy bits that really intrigued me. I bought 2 balls of this. It's vintage thrifted yarn, and when I received it, I realized that there's definitely signs that somebody feasted on it before. I wasn't sure how recent it is and how it was treated before it got to me, and I got so scared for my stash basically that I shoved it in the freezer for the night, and then I decided I will unskein it, unwind it. Yeah, it's unwind. Then wind it again into a skein to see if there are some friendly neighbors chilling in the yarn. There weren't any, so I didn't have to do the same thing with the other ball, but it really got me thinking that I need to select a different approach to vintage yarn and just maybe stop buying it altogether, or just be more careful, because I have mostly wools, so it just sounds scary. Moths are, you know, it's like in Friends when Rachel's dad says that rust is boat cancer. I think moths are yarn cancer. Apart from that, I actually really like this yarn. I'm glad I picked it up because it's a really nice chunky wool yarn to use for some winter accessories, maybe a hat and a pair of mittens to gift to somebody on Christmas, or maybe to gift to myself on Christmas. I'm not sure yet, but glad I have it. My friend visited a couple of weeks ago from Copenhagen, and I asked her to pick up this Isager Alpaca One yarn from a store I still don't know how to pronounce the name of. It'll be on the screen. It's one of the most beautiful yarn stores I've ever been to, and I worked with this yarn before. I used it to make a lace shawl, but this time I decided I want to pair it with a mohair and do a simple, also plain stockinette sweater, or more of a blouse. I chose a pattern called the Plain Yoke Blouse by Lana. It's the same designer who made the Peacock Cardigan and the Almaty. I'm always glad to try more of her patterns. It's pretty simple, so I could have drafted it myself, but again, I couldn't be bothered. Right now, I'm in this phase where I don't want to make any modifications and want to like think as little as possible about any drafting or calculations in my knitting. So I'm really excited also to start knitting it once I'm done with my commissions and done with my remastered weekend slipover turned sweater. So I'm gonna hold it double, and this is just a regular stock silk mohair I picked up from like a wool warehouse. Should be a really lightweight drapey blouse. So far I only made a swatch, but I'm really excited about starting this one. And the last acquisition for today is, guess who ran out of storage again? It was me, yes. I'm singing because otherwise I will be cursing. I only lost about 10 minutes of footage, which is not that bad, but first of all, I already said goodbye, and second of all, now I'm running late to my hairdresser's appointment. In 20 minutes, I need to be already there with like wet hair, and instead I'm still recording. But anyway, it cut me off when I was showing you this beautiful yarn, which was another gift from the Ukrainian yarn dyer. This is getting embarrassing. I'm not used to getting like gifts or freebies. I've never been gifted yarn. That was just so nice of her. She saw me post a story or like a picture of my finished light loop sweater and decided to thank me, which was, she didn't have to do that. This colorway is so beautiful. It's this like quintessential fall brown and green, you know, sort of hazelnut colorway. I love it so much. Unfortunately, I don't think I will be using it this fall, and I'm also not going to be using it for socks again. This quantity is perfect for either a medium-sized shawl or maybe like a sleeveless top similar to the white top I made in spring. For now, it's just gonna wait its turn. It's just gonna sit in my yarn basket as decor, because if this isn't like fall in woods or like at the park, I don't even know what is. It's extremely beautiful. I know I said it like a million times, but this was a surprise because she didn't mention what colorway she will gift to me. She just said that she has a gift and I need to pick it up at the post office. And I gasped right there at the post office when I saw it. It's so beautiful. I said it like for the 5th time, I think. I'm sort of losing it because I'm looking at the time and I need to be out the door right now and not touching beautiful hand-dyed yarns. Said beautiful again. Oh my god. I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but I have no idea what it is. So it's gonna be a problem for a future me who has to include it in the next video. And for now, let's wrap it up. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please like this video and consider subscribing. Also, I want to thank everybody who helped me reach 1,000 subscribers, which is a crazy number to me. I'm so glad I get to be a part of this big community, even if it's a really small part. It makes me so happy to share my knitting with you, and as always, let me know what you're working on. Maybe you already started holiday knitting or gift knitting. I'll be glad to read about it in the comments, and have a wonderful day. I need to run. Bye.